Welcome to another episode of Premium Times Podcast, where we dive deep into the conversations that matter. I am your host, Esther Adaji. Our conversation today is centered around the proposed protest by Nigerians. In recent weeks, discussions about a nationwide protest to express citizens' dissatisfaction with the state of the nation has dominated public discourse. What is driving these protests? Hunger, they say. How has the president handled this? Can the issue be addressed? With me to discuss this are...
My name is Majeed. I'm a journalist with Premium Times.
My name is Olayinka. I'm a business developer and a business analyst.
My name is Willie, and I'm a public commentator and an entrepreneur.
Thank you. What are the key issues driving the planned protest in Nigeria?
It depends on the side of the divide that you're standing on. If you're on the side of most Nigerians, of course, it's driven by hunger. If you're on the side of the government, of course, they will view it from the angle of political. But one thing you cannot deny is the fact that there is serious hunger in the land.
Yes, I think the theme people are saying this protest is basically to end bad governance. Yeah. So I think the major thing people are trying to fight against is bad governance. And I think that's just the major thing that I have heard people talk about concerning this protest.
Okay. I agree with what has been said. Basically, everybody has talked about bad governance for a while now. Everybody has also talked about the hunger in the land, and it's morphed into this because when you try to politicize something that is very obvious, something that is in everybody's face, rather than fixing the problem, you end up getting these kinds of revolts or protests from people because you've pushed them to the wall for so long. So basically, yes, bad governance has, and also, what that creates, because it's a ripple effect. Hunger is not a standalone thing. It came about from bad governance. It came about also from bad policies and decisions by leaders who were not able to steer the country to where we're supposed to be. So basically it's a ripple effect from bad governance, insecurity, hunger, and so many other things.
I may have to disagree a bit with Willie because we cannot deny the fact that we just, less than 1 year ago, that we just had a general election that divided the entire country, obviously. So the idea of the protest coming in, so in as much as you cannot deny the fact that there is hunger in the land, you can also deny the fact that Nigeria is highly politicized. And if you look critically at the conversation, the way it's going, it is obviously that if you look on the side of those who are pro-protest, are people who felt lost out in the last election. And if you see people actually defending the government and saying that the protest is not actually the way, you see that these are pro-government people. So the entire concept, the team, the operative, the people who are talking about it, the people who are leading it, There is no any way you can, discount politics out of it. So I'm not sure to be totally right to say this is not politicized. It is to a large extent politicized, because if the argument is that there is bad governance, there is policy somersault, there is this, there is that, yeah. But if you look at critically, what is the major thing that is driving the economic hardship? Fuel subsidy removal. During the last presidential election, every single candidate that matters in the scheme of things committed themselves to removal of subsidy, unless you want to count Omoyele Sowore as a serious candidate, which obviously is not. But most of them agree to it. So you cannot get to a point where you are implementing this same policy on fuel subsidy removal and the aftermath, unless if any of the candidates can come and say, I would have done it differently, in a way that the kind of ripple effect are not going to come into play. So if you look at it generally in terms of the demand and position, you see that there are no clear-cut out positions in terms of even demand, in terms of what needed to be done. We've had a lot of protests in this country, and there are specific. If it's occupied, Nigeria, we are specific. Yeah. During Yaradua Jonathan transition period, for Jonathan to be sworn in, they were specific. So protest has to be specific. When it becomes generic, and you can see that this particular one has not been able to garner such momentum, because to a large extent, that even though people know that things are hard, but nobody has been able to give a particular position and say, let us demand for this, when we demand for this. And people make reference to Kenya. Kenya's protest was specifically triggered by the finance, bill, where these people come and say, no, this is unacceptable. And with every protest, the little fire has sparked in a way that the conversations now entered into cost of governance, and you see William Ruto has been making a lot of efforts to reduce cost of governance. So if this protest had been, let us cut down cost of governance, then that is specific, where everybody can come and say, look, the $21 billion naira used in renovating the vice president's house, maybe perhaps we should sell it and use the money to fix some other things. But still, the conversation has not yet gotten there.
Okay, so I would want to disagree with you a little, in the sense that the way things have been, the way government has, implemented this fuel subsidy removal, some people are of the opinion that the other candidates might not have implemented this immediately they come in. They probably would have, looked for ways to, cushion the effects of in so many other ways before just coming in, and on the very first day that you're coming in, you are declaring the subsidy. What plans did you put in place before this was done? And then again, aside the fuel subsidy, we also have to consider the dollar subsidy too, the removal of the subsidy on dollar. Now, people would also argue that maybe they shouldn't have removed the dollar around the same time that the dollar subsidy, around the same time that you're removing the fuel subsidy. These things basically control the economy. So removing both of them at the same time has brought us to where we are. But then again, we understand that these things have to be removed for Nigeria to move forward. But people are now aggrieved and they are unhappy about the way the government have gone about things. And so some people are pro their own candidates, which, can also prompt this kind of protests, But aside that, again, I think people are just unhappy generally about the way the government has handled things, ever since they've come in. And then again, it also looks like they don't really care about people's opinion or people's clamor ever since they've come in. And so this protest now is just basically people angry about how the government have treated issues in the country. And, we are saying, we need better ways of handling the economy, better ways of handling the governance, So that's why some people are saying, end bad governance. But then again, we also have to consider things that have been in place before this government came in, like also the cost of governance and all these things. So maybe some people are now saying it is about time for us to address these issues, for everybody to come out and say, let us just stop this thing. The fear is it can erupt to something way more than we can handle. People can hijack it. And so many other things that could happen that I feel that we will still talk about as as this conversation goes on.
People can hijack it if we are to follow the antecedents of how hijacking of protest has been in time past. Most of the time it was the government that hijacked it. Let's be honest with ourselves. We saw what happened during the NSAS. There was a back and forth talking about who sent the soldiers, who didn't send the soldiers, and who controls the soldiers, and all of that. That being said, I also want to add to what Yinka has said. So the funny thing is, we run a democratic government, a democratic system. I don't see how you can separate what governance is from politicking, because that is what we are running. It's a political system that we are running. So it's always very easy for those in governance to say, whenever people are rising up to speak to power, they are either being sponsored by their opponent, or it's a political maneuvering that is going on and all of that. Well, yeah, I don't see how you can separate the two, because the people who are in governance are politicking too. They are doing things that benefit them in the guise of politicking. I don't see how governance is becoming more and more expensive. Elections are becoming more and more expensive. The people who are to be governed are not being compensated for whatsoever. Cost of living is rising, and it feels like sometimes people who are in government don't have they are not in touch with reality, because you cannot be saying that people have to hold themselves and bear with the government, and then the government is becoming more and more expensive when it comes to its expenditures, especially for things that people are other people on the street do not have access to. They have, they're buying cars for themselves, buying private jets, they are buying, cost of governance is becoming more and more expensive.
Renovating houses in billions.
Yes, and yet the same people are telling us that, you have to bear with us. Can't you bear with us? Cut down the cost of governance. Let's see you to be doing something that is effective as well. If we see... Exactly. So if we see that you are cutting down cost of government, and we too are told to bear with you, that things are going to get better, why would we protest? And besides, I must add, I don't see how, if it is one or two persons coming out to protest, it doesn't make it a protest. There are places where we've had one-man protest, and it's still getting your voice heard. So I don't think just because it doesn't feel like, there's a national momentum or a slogan like how NSAS was, or the fuel subsidy protest, I think that this still has some momentum, and it's still going to be impactful as long as the government, for some weeks now, there have been meetings on meetings, the National Security Advisor, ministers and all of that. It means that it is impactful already, because it means that they are seeing. My only problem is when, rather than trying to solve the issue, you want to say it is politics. So why don't you try to be solving the issues, listen to the people, what exactly is going on, and then maybe we'll know where to go from there.
And that is why I said that the protest is it's a fundamental right, and historically, every single time in this country has been shaped by serious protest. And a lot of people are leading today are also product of such protests, and even beneficiaries of such protests. But however, what we are having conversation about is providing context to what exactly is happening right now. Now, Willie has really raised a very, very important issue, which is that, a specific subject matter in saying, reduce cost of governance. Look, when you make such a position, available, almost everybody in this country, apart from those who are currently in government, everyone is going to join because it's a clear position. And such position, implementing it are always very, very clear and measurable.
Well, I think our senators have done that.
No, they've not done that. They only removed, which is the basic part of it. If what they are earning, what they've reduced by half, if that is what they are earning, I'm not sure anybody will be against them, which is maybe about less than ₦1 million. That's what they cut. While the main one, which is the jumbo salary that we always talk about, which is about over 12.something. If they have done the reduction at that level of the 12.something million, everybody will be singing hallelujah now. Nobody's going to complain. And there is also equally, so now when you make a demand as to reduce cost of governance, you can measure it. The government will tell you, let the National Assembly resume back from their strike, have a supplementary national budget, call down everybody's this thing, ask revenue mobilization and fiscal, let them bring a review. You review it downward, measurable. You can say, implement your own SIA report, measurable. But when you say quote and unquote, end bad governance, it just lacks that touch. It's like as if you are planning to start making things up along the way. As you get there, when we get to the bridge kind of vibe, you're going to and that is where it becomes very, very dangerous. Because when NSAS happened, there were a lot of people that you could have said this is a pro-government person who actually backed the idea, because as long as if you've ever lived in any part of the country, particularly in the southern part of the country, you must have had your mad experience with police. So any form of reform of the police, I'm sure anybody will be on board. Now, immediately that slogan or that hashtag of Buhari must go, Buhari, you've been a bad boy, immediately it entered and the government baited them and said, look, come to the table. And everybody said, we don't have leader. The protest lost a very vital position until that tragedy of October 20 happened. And that is the danger now. You go to different parts of the country, people are actually hungry. And a hungry man is definitely an angry man. And if you do not have that sort of leadership, you're going to create a recipe for some serious disaster and some serious rioting. When you have a group of people, angry about things, and there's no leadership to really give that kind of structure and leadership. And I'm not one of those people who say politicians should not back protests. Politicians, opposition party should back protests, because in protesting, what they are trying to tell them is that, look, this is the alternative. Now, if you go back to the 2023 election, you realize that was the first election that we are going to have that ideologically, the three presidential candidates belong to the center right, campaigning on removal of subsidy, campaigning on unifying the exchange rate. So in whatever way, whether you do them for now, you do them later, fundamentally, even a candidate that contested under a labor structure that should be, anti-subsidy remover, actually said he's going to remove subsidy. So ideologically, they are not. But if Peter Obi or Atiku Abubakar today decides to lead a protest and say, okay, this is what we offer as alternative, and take leadership of such protests, it's all fine and good. So now, in terms of responses, the conversation about whether we are going to have protests or not has done tremendously in pushing the conversation forward. How has it pushed it forward? The president just signed minimum wage maybe some minutes ago. As someone who doesn't work for government, how is it going to affect my life? Of course not. But a vast majority of people and their families may get more money. Although for us who are not with government, we may end up going to market and people there, they don't increase minimum wage now, why your tomato cost? In the last couple of months, the government has decided, okay, let us look at some short-time importation to address food shortages. The Supreme Court judgment on local government autonomy, which may be a conversation for another day, I do not agree with, but could put more money within local community. I just came back from some remote part of Kwara North where I saw fertilizer being distributed, where you have soldiers on guard and layman's farmers were being called out and giving some of these things. I went to within the Ilorin city, I saw rice being, I may not agree with, distributing, but these are measures. So the protest must articulate these measures and give that concrete position, because immediately the conversation becomes a change of government or destruction of the system, you've created tyranny, because it's not only government or rulers that could be tyranny. There are also tyranny of majority or tyranny of minority or even tyranny of the mob. When you go outside the constitutional guideline as to change of government and change of power, in a very multi-ethnic society like ours, it becomes extremely dangerous, because at the end of the day, lines will start divided along ethnic and religion undertone, and may give some of the things that we do not even envisage. So, and that is why right now the protest has not been able to deliver a position as to what it intends, to achieve. Probably the bluff aspect of it and say, okay, the threat of protest could make the government to sit up, because the government really, really needs to sit up.
Okay, so I agree with what you just said. So my two key takeaways from what you just said now is, number one, the protest is not outlined, in the sense that there's no theme, there's nothing, properly outlined that we are looking for from this protest, apart from just the regular and bad governance.
They brought out, didn't you see the flyer? They brought out their demands, what they want. So why did you say it's not outlined? Sorry, please.
Okay, in one of the flyers that I saw, I just hope, we are not relying on speculation. One of the things is that bring back the price of petrol to $100 and to 100 naira per liter. I can't even remember some of the other things there. Now, you ask yourself, is that we've lived for too long as a nation on the magical idea that the government has this money. And I think our leaders too encourage that sort of thinking with their kind of lifestyle, where you look and say, but there's no money, how can you be buying SUV? So they have, and that's why I agree with Willie, that there's a need to really address that problem. Now, the government is proposing to spend 6.2 trillion additional money to address in the newly passed bill before the National Assembly. You ask yourself, where is the money coming from? The government is actually doing a single tax on the windfall that some of the banks made from the old devaluation. That money is not going to come next year. Just single source business. So the government is desperately looking for money from any means whatsoever that it can get that money.
Is that why they are borrowing money?
Yes, borrowing money, anybody that can give them money. So if you now move and say 100 naira per liter, I want to buy 100 naira per liter.
Exactly.
Everybody wants it.
Yes.
No, but now it now depends on what will now become of the country in 2 years' time. Yeah. And some people have made reference to and say, in 2012, this same set of people who are opposed to protest now, they actually encourage and back. And if you listen to me, I say, even opposition should lead the protest and make a position so that when we elect them, they will flow in line with what we have proposed. Because as at 2012, there was a general lack of understanding of even the word subsidy. It was, some of us came back from, it was new, but it took us 12 years to actually get to wrap our hand around it, for us to be explained to those who actually backed the removal at that time. We looked at them as terrible human beings. I can remember the town hall meeting that interestingly, one of the only person who stood out there was Adams Oshomole, who was even in opposition then, who came and said, look, this thing has to go. And he's a member of the organized labor group. So if you take it back, is that overall, if you review the demands, you look at it that it looks like something that somebody just wrote without enough thought into achieving it. If Willie had written the list of demand with his open line, oh boy, I'm going to be on the street because I've not benefited from the jumbo salary.
That's what I was even going to ask now. That what you saw is just an individual that might probably have just put it down. There's no collective. There's no collective acceptance of what are we protesting for.
What if it was influenced by the Kenyan protests?
Well, if it was influenced by the Kenyan protests, well, at the end of the day, in Kenya, there's still bad governance, and that is what they are trying to fight against. Or there is an issue that they are trying to fight against. So it's okay if it is influenced by something. Yeah. But what are the points that you are fighting for? Is it outlined? One. And secondly, are there leaders for this current protest? Because in every protest, it is very, very important to have leaders for this protest so that it doesn't get out of hand. So for this current protest now, I don't know if there are leaders that are championing this protest from happening. Leaders that are championing this protest, basically. So those are the two major things that I want to say.
So in terms of protest leadership, I can understand the sentiment, maybe from the old Black Lives Matters and the rest, to say, okay, probably from angle of, let us not be victimized. But seriously, if you make that argument and say, because I don't want to victimize, so therefore we should not lead the conversation. I can tell you this: being on the protest ground, singing some of those Aluta songs, the whole party, that's the fun part. It may look dangerous, but that's the fun part. Do you know the part that is not fun? When you get to the table and start negotiating all these things. And that is why during answers, and I always make reference to it as that, a lot of people who actually, who were at the forefront of the protest did not want to go and sit down on that table. Yeah. You know why? Because when you sit down on those tables and you negotiate, you come outside and you realize that the things that you agree with, you could even become the enemy of the people who say, you don't go cash out, they don't give you money, you don't sell out. So when you're done with the protest, and we saw it in Egypt during the Arab Springs, a lot of the liberalists, the protesters who went out, refused to form part of the government that now later allowed, Morsi to come on board, which is Islamic Brotherhood, who 1 year after or thereabout, the people still came out against them to allow another military guy to now come in again. So what am I saying in essence is that is the role the leadership plays, that after the gyration on the streets, then somebody can go in and sit down and say, this is our demand. Okay, let us start negotiating it. And that is why most times people look up to NLC or TUC to do some of those things because they can sit down. You look at the minimum wage negotiation. When did they start from? About 660 something. Then they told you at one point, I say, 250 or nothing, no going back. When they got 70,000, which by standard was a lot, they had to come. And I know that the way you've done your face. In the negotiation, I didn't envisage them getting 70,000. What I was expecting was 64,000.
Really?
Yes, because what the tripartite even recommended was 62. So I was hoping that maybe the president will want to form nice and say, okay, have 2,000 or have 3,000 on top of it. But when they heard the word 70,000, and they now heard again and say, okay, in 3 years' time, we are going to review it again. They started singing Babake inside that venue. So, and that is that is why at the end of that negotiation, a lot of people looked at Joe Ajero and Osifo and the rest and said, you guys sold out. And he has to come on TV and say, you know what we have to do to get whatever we've got. If you can do it better than us, come outside and come and do it better. Yeah. And that is how protest is about. Because if we allow the anger to be channeled in a way that, look, I'm not lying if I say that people are hungry and angry in a way that you cannot understand, that people will earn money and 100% of that money goes into feeding, and they will still need to borrow just to eat.
Pay rent.
You're not even talking about rent now.
About transportation.
Yes.
This is just feeding. When the price of food has gone 50% higher than what it is, or probably 100%. Yeah. So when you consider other factors like transport, housing,
rent, water,
and all that. Come on, it's ridiculous.
Yeah.
It's ridiculous.
You have electricity bill and the whole ban A thing and everything.
Exactly.
So you already have the ground for serious days of rage that can sustain rage. But protest is a means to an end. It's not an end in itself. It must towards achieving things. There are some protests like the Nadeko protest against Abacha. It went on for a lot of period. Consistently, people having this kind of deliberation about it. During Jonathan's period, it was so a fixed thing and say, okay, this is what we wanted. And the president came, reversed back, I think to 83 or something. Yeah. From 65 to, whether it's 82 or 87. That's the kind of negotiation at the end of the day. If you allow it to just take the life of its own, for people to just, because at the end of the day, you ask yourself, in the course of the whole thing, if someone loses his shop, his car got burnt by an irate mob, he lost, maybe his house got burnt. Are you going to give that person back whatever he or she has lost, or did you ask the person if the person is willing to sacrifice for the common good? The answer is that you've not. So for you to have that kind of protest, and I'm not speaking like this in support of some of the shenanigans that some of the IG or some of the irritating things that they've said, because of course their position is to defend whoever is in government. So we get that. But in terms of as a citizen, as someone who is going to be on the field covering it, who may even chant some of those Aluta slogan, is that let us have a clear position. And I really hope that when they're listening to this, they can take the recommendation by Willie as to adopting. See, when if you do that protest, I'm telling you on cost of governance, you're going to put everybody on the spot, including state governors. If you ask them, you send trailers and trailers of rice to states, and you go to a shop, somebody is rebagging it and reselling.
I saw the video yesterday of Kogi it happened in Kogi State where they were rebagging.
We saw in Kano too. We've seen one in Kano that was recently reported.
Yeah.
So when you have this kind of, so there's that general review is that if you look at some of this and you make that position known and say there is no reason why a senator should be using SUV on top which road, the bad one where una no do. So if you have that, I'm telling you that everybody will be on the spot. Everybody will go out to make that argument. And if at the end of the day, at the end of this year, if this protest can address that one single thing, I'm going to be a very, very happy man. I can even say, no, journalism will keep on one side. Now all of us be Nigerian. Let us be on the streets. If you can address that one problem, because when it addresses it, let the senators, let them use normal saloon car, enter that pothole. We have a situation whereby all the roads in Abuja, not in Abuja, within the city center are being refixed. How can you spend a lot of money refixing for where those elites are staying? So there's too much disconnect between them and the citizens. They are just there. You are giving them bowling lives when people... And I can tell you for a fact is this, and it's not speculation. The salary of the judiciary was recently reviewed massively. And I won't be surprised if after all this thing has died down, that the National Assembly are going to seek an amendment to the Revenue and Fiscal Mobilization Law to have a review, because even within themselves, they've been crying. Some of them will cry off the record and say, the money they do because some of us are employing as many as 100. I send you.
Imagine.
Why not take, and some of them are doing it. Some of them in the constituency, they have 100 people that they place on salary. Yeah, there are some. I've seen people who have shown me their bank this thing as to number of persons that they've employed under employment and under empowerment. Why not give that same money as grants for those people to be able to go to farm? Why not in your local government headquarters buy a tractor in every local government and say, for anyone that wants to use this tractor, charge them just 30%, and that 30% should go into maintenance. So there's a whole lot at which our conversation can address. But if it's just those days of rage, we are angry, we're not going to address the problem.
Yes, I've been seeing reports on our platform, Premium Times, of the president, as we earlier stated here, meeting with the traditional rulers, meeting with the IG of police, meeting with the army. We've been seeing him taking all these steps. Do you think it's necessary for the president at this point to come and address the nation?
Oh, yes, I think it's necessary for the president to address the nation, to keep everybody calm, to let us know that things are being done to better the current situation. Not just keep quiet and run around behind closed doors. But that is also something he's supposed to do nonetheless. When you foresee danger, it is very important to look for ways to to address it, to calm down the situation. So I think it's okay for him to have these meetings, to have this, behind closed door meetings with all these chiefs, obas, and the likes that you mentioned. But, another thing I think is going on is that I think the president is not really aware of how hard things are. I want to believe that, I don't know, maybe he's isolated one way or the other, in the sense that he's not in tune with the current reality in Nigeria. As he said, yes. So, now that he's hearing about protests, because I think from his own point of view, he has already approved to the 70,000 or is how much minimum wage. And from his own point of view, I think I've done it for the people now. So what is their issue? Why are they still trying to come out to protest, So that, from his own point of view, that might probably be why he's now running helter-skelter and to and fro, trying to find a solution to stop, the forthcoming protests. Yes. So it's okay for him to run around. It's okay for him to find solutions. It's very okay, and it's what he's supposed to do,
And I even think that aside from the occasional ceremonial address of fellow Nigerians and some of these things that the president is doing, I think it is critical that his handlers should have, let's say, a monthly or quarterly address to talk to the nation, or have, organize an interview with journalists, not those pre-recorded things, to talk to journalists.
I think we were doing this before. NTA was, there was this thing they were doing, having conversation with the president, asking him questions about progress so far. I think we were doing it before.
Yes, we used to do it, but I think the Buhari administration really, to a significant and dangerous extent, reduced the engagement between the president and the citizens. And I feel that the handlers should make it whether the country is peaceful or not, the president should be able to talk to Nigerians. He should be able to take questions from journalists, to let them ask him this kind of questions, so that it will not be, sometimes governance is not supposed to be too distant, where you have to see you like some emperor in some Roman movie, where once in a while you have to go. Look, whatever is going on now is critical. That ability to do engagement, and I must give it to the current president compared to the last one, is that he has a stake in, because what he's always branding about is his democratic credential, in saying that I was once a protester, I'm a beneficiary of this system. And if you can look at his address during the June 12 address, the address was focused on his credentials, mentioning people's name in specific, people who were together with him in the trenches during that period. But this is his first litmus test as to him being a Democrat. Now, how well is he going to be able to handle the protest if and when it commences? Is he going to be able to talk to them? Is he going to be able to address them? Is he going to even be able to leave the presidential villa and probably climb on the stage and address the nation and say, look, I hear you, I feel you. This is what we've been doing. This is our commitment to what we are going to do more. And if at the end of the day there is dialogue, how well is he going to do beyond just setting up a committee, because I'm not sure you need a committee to know that there is hunger in the land. And although the solutions are not that simple. Let's say for the instance now about the policy on importation of food. You cannot do it for a long period because you are going to destroy the local market. And I could remember this conversation happened during the election when Adaji said, look, I'm going to open the border. And the APC and some of their handlers went into the market to say, oh, it's going to destroy the food farmers in Kebbi, is going to do this. And interestingly, they've gone back to that same policy that they criticized Adaji for. So this is that litmus test. But so far, the level of the engagement has been to a large extent commendable. However, he needs to keep some of his appointees on the leash, particularly the Minister of the FCT. Some of the shenanigans that have been coming out of him has not, to a large extent, some of them, pardon this word, some of them have been very, very silly in saying, oh, you cannot do this, or you cannot use that place. No, it's unacceptable. Protest is fundamental. You can appeal to people. You can persuade them. You can even cajole them. But to now start saying, oh, one group should come and use the Eagle Square, and one group cannot use the Eagle Square, it's not acceptable. Some of those people like Bayo and Onugas who have been retweeting, things as to, stop.
Even accusing Peter Obi and Pat Etumi.
Yes, making some of those. So he must be able to, look, I'm not the type that will say, oh, a politics should be over friendly. There are rooms for them to fight among themselves. But if the president is claiming to be this, he should be able to guide his lieutenants to also be consistent in the message. He cannot be putting out message of dove and those people are putting out message of hyenas. There must be that consistency. And so far, there has not been that kind of consistency as to the message that is coming out of this current government.
Jeez.
Absolutely, I think he should address. I mean, he was elected by the people, and if the people are now saying that they want him to do certain things, it's only appropriate that he speaks to the people who elected him. I don't think that this continuous hiding behind other elected officials.
Jury statements.
Yes, spokespersons and all of that. I don't think it's appropriate. You should, when it was time for campaign, you were all over the place speaking to people. Yeah. So why not now? If the people have issues and they are bringing them up, and it has even come to your table to the extent that you have started having meetings, those meetings should culminate into you addressing the people.
Even as a matter of fact, I think it should do a regional tour of the entire country. Go to places. Don't limit it to just TV. Have town hall meeting.
And we're having town hall meetings.
Yes, we should. It should have it. It should visit, states. Select some of those states at a regional basis. Have some of those governors there. Have people. Let them talk. Let them in a much more relaxed, atmosphere. You can do this within 2 or 3 weeks. There are just 6 geopolitical zones. Go to each one of them. Have some of those leaders. Let them talk to you. Let them feel it and give a timeline. Not just, things will be better soon. We'll come out of the wood. This one must be specific and say, in the next 2 months, this is what we have for inflationary, the plan. Because if you look at his economic blueprint and plan, you know that, everything is off the chart now. But there must be a new one, which is promised and say, look, with these things that we'll put in place in the next 3 months, this is what we are expecting to happen to the inflationary rate. This is what we are looking to happen to, food. And he should not be able to articulate his thoughts as to what they've done and why some of those things are necessary and the gains that have been made there. And these things should be in numbers that people will now understand. And now make another projection and say, by December, these are things that are going to happen, that are going to address. So the talk, the national broadcast to be the first step, and the regional conversation, with every single part. And in some of you in those regional conversations, the issues that are affecting those regions should be addressed. If you go to the northwest, you should be able to talk to them and say, look, we are going to address elders farmers clashes. This is what we've done, and this is what we expected. The issue of banditry, this is what we are going to do, this is what we've done, this is what we expect. So on the food, whatever, this is what is going to happen in the next couple of days. You go to Southeast, that conversation must follow along that line. Look, there are ongoing conversations with Nnamdi Kanu and the old thing. This is what we expect to see. So when you have this kind of intentional one, don't send Vice President Shettima and his rhetorics. Go there yourself. Let people talk to you, and it's going to have a lot of convincing, because when Shettima speaks, we know that he knows how to throw the number. But the thing is that people may not connect the same way they will connect with you as the president and see you and say, okay, it seems like this person sees us beyond just being subjects, that we are citizens.
So finally, what lessons can be learned from the past protests in Nigeria regarding their effectiveness? Your final.
This is effective. If we are not, we are a nation that is very, very sophisticated and complicated in the same manner. And we've been product from pre-independence to post-independence to the military regime. You've seen that the capacity to put away our differences has shown to be enormous in achieving some of the things that we want. Some persons may look and say, Nigerians are docile, go to this place. Trust me, some of the things that we've been able to use protests to do, to address in this country, there are very few nations who have such record as to things that they could change. A man once looked us in the eye in this country and said he wants to transit from being a khaki person to military. And people for years, to civilian, for years, until it got out of the way. There are very few African countries that have the boldness to look at someone like General Sani Abacha and say that no, it's not going to happen. And people stood up for that long. Some people have been living under Pobia for years without being. So when people throw those things around and say go to Kenya, have they done what we've been able to do as a nation? The answer is no. There are very few countries that have been able to use protests to effect change without turning their nations to state of anarchy, like the way we've been able to do. And what has been the guiding principle? The understanding that protest is a means to an end, not an end in itself, because anarchy is easy to start. Let me use the word of the president. Yeah. But bringing back peace is very, very hard. So we have in our nature, we are people who have the capacity and the ability to protest, and at the same time we know when to call it quits and win another day.
Okay, so yes, I think we of late in the last few protests we've had, or I think even almost every protest we've had in Nigeria has had its own positive outcome, in the sense that the government has been able to heed towards like the EndSARS, like the fuel subsidy, the 2011 one. Yes. So if this one is properly done, I think that the people can get a positive outcome from it. But as we have mentioned earlier on, what we are looking for from this protest should be properly outlined for us to be able to achieve the results that we are looking for. So it is not bad to have a protest. I think it is good for people to air out their opinions and let the government know what they are doing right and what they are not doing right. Yeah. And to let the government know where the pain is, from the part of the people. So a protest is okay, but it should be properly organized and the points should be properly put out. So I'm in support of the protest, but I'm in support of a protest that is organized, and I'm in support of a protest that is geared towards specifics too, like Majeed said.
Yeah. Well, yeah, absolutely. I think we've had results, very tangible results from protests in Nigeria. like everyone has mentioned, the most recent ones that we've had, and several others that were even smaller, whether it is the federal ministries protesting, or schools and all of that. We've had quite some good protest. The thing is, just like everyone has pointed out, it has to be targeted appropriately, and it has to be properly articulated and outlined, so that when it is responded to, you can say, okay, yes, this is what they asked for, and this is what they've been able to achieve with those things. Protests are good, as long as they are done in the confines of the law, and the people to whom the protesters are speaking to should be seen to be listening and trying to work out the modalities for resolving issues.